Hey everybody, this is Carl back again for another comic book spoiler review. And I had to literally, since my review on Spider-Gwen, which I completed like literally a week ago, check that out on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkative Carl. Links are in the description, as well as my other Spider-Man reviews that I'm going through before Across the Spider-Verse comes out in June. So I'm really, wrapping up all the different variants of Spider-Man, and I'm after Spider-Gwen and this, there's gonna be some kind of long ones that I'm wrapping up. I say them for last, but nearly done with the last Spider-Man comic book review that I'll be taking care of. Being the Spider-Verse comic event. It's probably gonna be a while before I get back into another Spider-Man related thing, but I want to cover some of the biggies. And of course, we're not gonna be going too far away from Ultimate Universe, because the next comic book review that I'll be covering is Miles Morales and his origin story in the Ultimate Universe. And yeah, in case you don't know, because Spider-Verse movie kind of touched on it for those who might not have been in the know, which I gotta say James Gunn is doing like a good job with this in the current DC movie lineup, where you get to see in trailers, like, if you want to know more about this kind of story that we're adapting, read these kind of comics. And Marvel has not done that, which is kind of funny. It's like, rather than like relying on other people doing reviews, or people in the movie theater that you're with, or people you're going to this movie theater with, and you asking them like, where's this from, and blah blah blah. Kevin Feige could have been. I think at the very least should have starred at, if not the first two Avengers films, definitely Civil War. I think that would have been like an appropriate time to start including, like, hey, if you want to know more about like Marvel Civil War, read these comics, and put it in the trailer and that kind of thing, so catch people up. But anyway, if you want to know more about what's the Ultimate Universe, basically, because I only were learn about the Ultimate Universe a little bit, by late high school, early college. And I think it should be around high school, somewhere around there, because I remember one of my favorite video games I remember loving playing on my Nintendo's GameCube. Remember those? Because called Ultimate Spider-Man, and it was based off. I didn't even notice at the time when I played that game. It wasn't until sometime after the game came out that I learned about the Ultimate Universe, because there's a few moments going apart in the middle of, because I'm only doing like, it's 130 some odd issues this first run. They only made like two long runs, several years apart from each other, because this 1 through 133 came out in the year 2000, and it took several years before they do another one that's a lot longer, 1 through 160 something. And it was too much. I didn't want to spend like freaking forever trying to go through all this stuff. And there's a few things here and there that is kind of, you can like skip it, because it's kind of like filler episodes, if that makes any sense. And this universe uh is also where Miles Morales originally came from. This is basically, well, in original mainline Marvel comics, Spider-Man was first created in the 60s during the whole like period of like the dangers of radioactivity and the atomic bomb situation. And that was the big kind of like concerning topic of the time when Stan Lee created Spider-Man. But um and that's where we get like X-Men and like all this other stuff that came from the atomic age. Now we're in like the genetic age, and this is set where if all the superheroes that we know were coming out of the woodwork instead of in like the 40s, 50s, and 60s and 70s, this is like late 90s getting to the 2000s is when they start popping up, and is doing this whole genetic age, trying to recreate the super soldier serum with Captain America. And things are just slightly different. This is like, more of the modern age, or peak modern age, where Peter Parker got his powers a little younger, slightly, compared to his adult counterpart that we are more familiar with. And this is written by Brian Michael Bendis, art by what is this man's name? All right. Oh my god. It will be on a page that I do not have. Sorry. Uh, Mark Bagley. That's the artist. Okay. So if you're, I'm kind of, because it's gonna be a while before I even touch, the other long 100, probably not the complete 160 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man. Probably is gonna be like a long while, but I'm not gonna bury lead here. If you've seen the movie, you know that Ultimate Peter Parker eventually dies. He got maybe a good few years on him into the Spider-Man career. Like, don't know exact like timeline, and a little iffy on that here and there, but it's a good like few years. Unlike in the movie where it seems like he's been like doing this better part leading into his like mid to late 20s. So yeah, just like in the movie, Ultimate Peter Parker dies, but unlike the movies, he isn't killed by the Kingpin. He's killed by Ultimate Green Goblin, if I remember correctly. But it was I can't remember the Miles Morales story where it was sometime after certain characters from the Ultimate Universe merged into the mainline universe, people that people liked, that they decided to keep. This whole situation with like Molecule Man, and like if you've seen Doctor Strange too, they hear the word about like the what's that C word, where like pretty much like different universe colliding into each other kind of situation. I got the C word. It was collision, coalescing, something like that. I'm blanking on it right now, but the Ultimate Universe ultimately dies anyway. But there's few moments here and there where I remember just reading Venom comic line, it was before the whole the Null invasion situation, where he's dealing with an evil Reed Richards, and he was transferred to like the Ultimate Universe. They don't really do much after that. It's kind of like they keep touching on it. It's like, all right, did this place survive? You know, what's going on? A lot of writers keep playing around with that. You know, a few writers keep playing around with that here and there. It's never really like first for certain here, but all intents and purposes, let's just say, like, you know, the Ultimate Universe ultimately collapsed, and it was doing like some separate. It was doing like a particular event. Molecule Man, who's like, he Molecule Man has always, you know, not always, but you know, a long time ago, Molecule Man has always been like some kind of joke villain until certain writers decide to like dive deep into his powers and realizing how completely like, you know, overpowered he actually is, and then we can do with it. And Miles Morales did something nice for him without realizing who that guy really is. At least I don't remember if he knew who that guy really is, but he did something nice for him, and out of a kind gesture in return, he decides to make sure, you know, Miles Morales and all of his supporting characters manage to survive and keep in the mainline universe. This is also where we get Sam Jackson Ultimate Nick Fury, you know, because Sam Jackson is based, the creation of the Ultimate Universe Nick Fury was completely the artist fully admits this a long time ago in an interview. He, you know, based his version of Nick Fury off of Sam Jackson. That's why he looks like a spot on Sam Jackson, and that's what the MCU decided to like use, you know, their version of Nick Fury, because he was the coolest one. Of course, a long time ago, there was a Agents of Shield movie where it has David Hasselhoff as the white Nick Fury that we all also know him to look like, and they kind of retcon to have Sam Jackson Nick Fury be the white Nick Fury's, you know, illegitimate son, some kind of thing like that. If you want to know what happened to White Nick Fury, it was a situation where he's like partnered up with Uatu the Watcher. You know his story, how like what he's up to after original Sin Marvel event, which I eventually would want to cover. But he stole one, like, you know, one of Uatu's eyes, and you know, used his power to like reveal all these dirty little secrets, you know, that, you know, all these heroes did not know. Like Peter Parker realized about the, you know, existence of Cindy Moon, aka Silk, and how she got her powers and she's hiding in a bunker situation. Like, you know, Thor is not really worthy, and that's why he became unworthy Thor for a bit, and that's where you eventually get Jane Foster Thor, blah blah blah. Daredevil, his mother is that nun that you know we see in like the Daredevil show and stuff like that. You know, is a whole thing. So, in this universe, we also got the Avengers, but they don't call themselves the Avengers here. They call themselves the Ultimates. And by and large, from what I remember, I didn't read much of the Ultimate stories like that. I did like, you know, a little bit of like Ultimate Iron Man, because I thought his Iron Man costumes or armor is like pretty dope. But by and large, you know, most of the roster of the Ultimates is kind of like complete assholes, from what we know from their original counterparts. They're not like evil, but it's kind of like, you know, their behavior is a little bit askew. You also got like Ultimate Fantastic Four. We see a little bit in here, or only a couple of stuff with Ultimate Fantastic Four, and a couple of stuff from Ultimate X-Men, which we also see a little bit in here as well. That's why I want to make sure like I cover a significant amount so we can at least, you know, touch on these guys just a little bit. But anyway, I thought I'd just give you like a brief rundown of like what's the, you know, layout here of this universe. And once we cover Miles Morales' story, because I thought we were going to be like a couple of weeks before I, get into this, but I really like laid in some crunch time into this, and like luckily, last week, just like this week, I got like a 4-day kind of like break from work, unscheduled, time off of work. Like I wasn't scheduled for work for a good lengthy period for last week and this week. That's why I've been like going to work like nonstop, from the beginning part of this week. So now I got like a long, break now. So just like this, I'm gonna lay some crunch time into Miles Morales origin. That's gonna be pretty lengthy, not as much as this, but still. And the same thing with the next one after that will be like Superior Spider-Man. That's gonna be pretty lengthy too, and that's when I'm gonna be going right into Spider-Verse, which is also not as lengthy but pretty long. I'm excluding tie-ins as well, but so I got significant time into this, so instead of 2 weeks, I'm just getting into it right now. Just got back from watching Shazam 2. I'm not gonna cover it here. I'm gonna wait till Saturday to do a spoiler review, so look out for that. So anyway, now into the story here. Now, just like typical Peter Parker stuff, he is like a nerdy kid, and there's a few instances where like bits and pieces from like several of the movies you see incorporated into this that they took off of this comic run, and vice versa, because there is like an arc where they setting up about the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire. They had a thing with it, with actual drawings of Sam Raimi and all this other stuff. It's kind of funny, but we'll get into that eventually. But here we got cool, Harry Osborn, kind of like James Franco situation. Or if you've seen my spoiler review of MTV Spider-Man series, the only season that they had, you got like very cool, popular Harry Osborn. And of course, the typical thing, he looks for approval for his father. He's not getting it because his father's a complete jerk. And by and large, he keeps, the bullies off his back. You got Mary Jane in here, and there's gonna be like a series of on again, off again situations, more often than we see from even the main line. At least like from at least back in the day. And she's not nerdy, but she's like getting schoolwork done and everything like that. So they call her like Brainy Jane, something like that. Anyway, you also got the whole Flash Thompson thing, and you got this kind of like overweight sidekick named Kong. And of course, they own like the sports team and everything like that. It's always either football or basketball. He's just a dumb jock. And of course, they like to play this stupid game where he they take turns trying to trip over Peter Parker. And it's like 10 points. And it's like they're bullying, of course, this is before the age of anti-bullying, and that's why we got like, from like Spider-Man Homecoming up until like No Way Home, where that version of Flash Thompson isn't like the typical bully. They, bullying kind of evolved to like what we see that version of Flash Thompson do, verbal, well, not physical, because he's not that physically imposing, but more verbal lashing and like viral tweeting type of bullying kind of stuff. But of course, the story. He goes to like the They go to Midtown High. They go to the well, they ended up going to like this field trip, but uh, you know the story. He gets, you know, because Norman Osborn was creating this kind of formula named the Oz formula, and trying to recreate the Captain America Super Soldier Serum. You know, each lots of different people tried to like create like the some kind of variation of the Super Soldier Serum that was lost in the 40s by Erskine. And of course, like Bruce Banner tried to do it. That's why he became like the Hulk. And in this version is Norman Osborn who's trying to you know, make this formula, inject it into other species to try to like cultivate that. You put into a spider, the spider bit him, and you know, it's flung off, and then it lands on MJ's like boobs, and she brush it off. Kong steps on it, and thing is dead. And of course, Big Park gets sick. Yeah, he goes home, and it's like, you know, slowly but surely his powers start to like accumulate. And of course, this is witnessed on camera because we don't like, you know, in the original timeline, we really never, or even like in like Spider Gwen's timeline or universe, or even like well, Miguel O'Hara, you know, kind of mess with the security stuff because he's, you know, smart, and he, you know, worked at the place so he can like cover his tracks. But this is one of those rare occasions where, because Brian Michael Bendis is a pretty smart writer, and he's, you know, wrote all the Ultimate Spider-Man stuff. He was the main one. That's why, you know, because most people eventually drop off of the book after a certain amount of issues, and then somebody else picks up and kind of change the status quo a bit. And it, you know, most comic book readers are used to it, but it's like, you know, it's total whiplash to some others. Except what's going on currently with Daredevil and Punch. I think that has been like solid for a good, well, especially Daredevil has been solid for a good few years now. This has been really solid work, and I want to get back into reading some Daredevil stuff for you guys, especially with Born Again, you know, TV show coming out. Gotta, you know, review Born Again for the channel. But you know, Pete gets sent home, like, you know, he's like, of course, like Flash and Kong is laughing like, puny Parker. I was like, you know, it's like, dude's, you know, got bit by something that's experimental. Why are you laughing at him? Oh, the security kind of situation. They see it, you know, because a lot of people eventually starts figuring out Peter Parker is Spider-Man long before the whole his ultimate death towards the next series. But, you know, the security kind of picked up the whole situation. Osborn and his crew of flunkies eventually, like, you know, witnessed this and started putting, if well, here's the thing. At first, they think they're gonna get like a lawsuit because, like, they're thinking this kid's gonna eventually die because none of the other, you know, test subjects made it. Of course, they tested on animals. They haven't gone to human trials yet. Of course, like, you eventually figure out that Osborn is have some kind of contract with Shield, because instead of a helicarrier that they usually based on, they have this base called the Triskelion, is off the coast of New York Harbor in the Ultimate Universe, which it doesn't exist in the mainline story. Oh, and that's another thing. Before we get to Superior Spider-Man, after I cover Miles Morales' origin story, I will cover the event Spider-Men, where Peter Parker meets Miles Morales for the first time during this kind of crossover situation. So, um, they send like a, like Osborn sent like a fruits basket, paid the hospital bills, and of course this version of Aunt May and Uncle Ben kind of grew up in like the 70s, so they kind of like a hippy dippy kind of like mindset until they got this kid, they adopted because the parents died in a plane crash situation. So yeah, it kind of forced them to take their own responsibility and try to look after this kid and everything like that. They go see Crusher wrestler, of course, just like in most origin stories. Peter wears kind of like a makeshift costume, hoodie, or not hoodie, but like a sweater with like like a makeshift mask. He goes and try to win some money to pay off like the medical bills. I mean, not the medical bills, because there's one point where like Parker, because kudos to this version of Peter Parker, because he stands up a little bit more to Flash's ignorance, more so than most other variants of him. And one time when he tried to trip him up, his spider sense kicked in, and he quickly dodges out of the way, and reflexes take over, and he flips Kong over and falls flat on his face. And then he like gets into it with Flash. They decide to like duke it out after school. Peter just he isn't the aggressor. He just dodges, because just like you see in the first Spider-Man movie, he dodges, and then as he's trying, Flash trying to throw a punch, Peter just holds up his hand, and because he got that strength, Flash with full force, it's kind of like trying to put your full force and trying to hit a brick wall. He smashes his hand, and of course, of course, Flash's family, especially his father being kind of, you only see him once, and you already get the impression how much of an idiot he is, and a-hole he is, and where Flash gets all that mess from, or at least why, because that's usually the typical bully story, like why bullies are bullies, because they come from like a crappy background, and they kind of want to unload it on somebody else kind of situation. So they threaten to sue the medical bills, and so using like the wrestling money to like secretly pay it off under the guise with hidden notes saying that it's from like the school, want to remain anonymous, but it's really Peter, using some of the funds to like help pay that off. Of course, he started using his powers to like, got the situation with Flash. They need somebody else to fill in his spot on the basketball team. And of course, after witnessing like, Peter throwing like a ball at Flash with such like accuracy and skill, because he was like hitting on Mary Jane, and of course he didn't care for that all that much, because Flash isn't like one of those kind of like wasn't trying to force himself onto her, but he was kind of like a very smuggy about it, kind of slimy about it a little bit, and he's like, back off kind of situation. The coach, of course, is impressed, and he wants to like invite him onto the team. So he gets all that going for. So he's like quickly becoming like popular and everything like that. But the wrestling coordinator is the one who gives him like the iconic Spider-Man outfit but the only difference is he made, of course, Peter made some alterations because it didn't have the Spider-Man logo on the front, nor the whole iconic, web design on the red spots. So he included those himself later on. And of course, like there's a moment where Osborn sent one of his hitmen to try to take out Peter Parker one day. It's kind of a different variation on Spider-Man's origin, where as he's days after getting bitten by the spider, he's walking down the street, and then it's like he wasn't paying attention. The car nearly hit him. He jumped and leaped on to the side of the building situation. Here, there's actually a guy coming after him, and he dodges out of the way from being hit. Then, as soon as he tries to check and see if the guy's okay, his spider sense warns him just to get the heck away, because dude's put out a piece about to shoot him, and he runs completely in the opposite direction. And he calls in Norman. Norman just tells him, like, he did what? Okay, no, leave him alone. I need to see what else is going on with this kid, because powers seem to be developing. So after the scene, like, okay, this kid is gaining spider abilities after we inject the animal with the Oz formula and then inject it through him. I'm gonna introduce my bloodstream with my blood mixed with the Oz formula and re-inject myself with it, and try to be like ultimate human, essentially. This is kind of dumb, but he, of course, things go haywire because as Harry's walking in on the lab, because you see also Dr. Octavius, who works for him, and he fastens himself like those metal arms, trying to handle certain things all at once. He's injecting himself. Is technically a success, but it turns into this big green kind of hulking monster. The Ultimate Green Goblin is kind of like just like a bestial thing. There's no gear that we typically see Green Goblin have. He has more like a goblin demonic face, but it's just kind of like a hulking green beast, and it destroys the lab. Almost everybody's killed except for Dr. Octavius and Harry. And of course, as he's leaving the wrestling arena after he's accused of stealing, because nobody knows who he is, and they, somebody's been dipping into the funds, and they just quickly just accuse him because nobody knows who he is, and so he just left out of there. No more extra funds coming his way. Eventually, he does work at the Bugle. We'll get to that soon. He passed by this bodega. Is getting robbed by this dude. Of course, he doesn't stop him, and he figures like, oh, it's not my problem. Mr. Parker, that's my problem. Of course, when he gets home, he gets a talking to by his aunt and uncle, because one of his grades is dipped on his progress report, and they want to know like what's going on with him. He's feeling like he's getting like he's it feels like in his eyes he's doing he's finally, achieving something. He's not like a punching bag for everybody. And it's like, okay, like, one class is slowly dip. I can easily make that up whenever I want to. I'm very smart. And you can see a little bit of this kind of stuff continue on through the run, where it's like, he's cutting class and everything like that, but his grades still maintained somewhat. Of course, he was running out of there. It's kind of like Amazing Spider-Man, where he's like, he had his blow up with his aunt and uncle. He just left out of there. So he goes to visit Kong. It's amazing how he knows where Kong lives, and he asks, can I stay here with you? And of course, like, Kong, whose parents are pretty much like neglectful, so he got his house to himself, which he's like, okay, cool, no problem, dude. And of course, Kong himself, there's gonna be some layers to him and somewhat to Flash as the series go on, but he lets Peter stay there, and he knows he has like a Spider-Man shirt on. He has like, where did you get that? It's like, oh, I bought this. It gets, it's funny to see Peter get so irritated, because it's like, you could easily be making money off all this merchandise and all the other stuff, but it's like, without revealing his secret identity, he gets nothing, and it's always bugs the crap out of him. There's one moment when he bumps into Kitty Pryde, Shadowcat from the X-Men, and he mentions about how she got like posters of him in her room, and it's like, you ain't getting no revenue from any of that. And of course, there's a party going on. And you got Liz Allen here, who's, unlike in other iterations, because in the main lines of the story, she ultimately ends up with Harry Osborn. They have a kid named Normie, the whole situation with that, and she eventually kind of helps take over. As a matter of fact, I haven't seen that in a while, but there was like a period where she takes over the Osborn business, because both Harry and Norman at that time are both dead. But here she's kind of a bit of a bigot towards mutants, I guess, because one of her relatives, I think uncle, is accused of being like a mutant. Wasn't like for sure that was the case or not, but everybody's worried that she might. I mean, she's got a fear of also turning to a mutant, because of course the whole situation with mutant hating groups and everything like that. So she has like a thing against just power people in general, because who knows if they're just all mutants. But she's drunk in this party. She's all over Peter, and of course Peter's not doing anything, because like this girl's like completely drunk, not she doesn't have all of her faculties. And of course MJ walks in at the time. Of course these two like start becoming a thing. She runs out. He's trying to chase after her. Of course, Ben shows up, and of course, which of course, Ben at first, like, it's kind of like if you had a party you're not supposed to be in, and I mean, there's lots of people who've been in that situation. Back in high school, you had a party you're not supposed to be at, especially if you was told no. Or in his case, he just ran and didn't decide to tell nobody where he was going, roaring his aunt and uncle half to death. And of course, eventually, he probably asked around, eventually found this party where Peter's supposed to be at. And like, just the fear, just open the door and there's your parental figure standing there with this kind of dour look on his face, just like a usually typical dad looks. And he was dragging Peter by an arm outside the party, and of course he gives like those typical kind of lectures things. you were your aunt and me half to death and blah blah blah. But then he takes a breath and just like, and talks to him, like, like a person, not down to him. And of course, he gives that whole great power and responsibility lecture. And of course, Peter is like, it's like it's not sinking in for him because, like, because as Ben telling him, he learned great power and great responsibility from, Peter's father that taught him that. And of course, Peter kind of blows up on him. It's like, if he's so great, then why is he not here? And of course, he going through these growing pains. That's one of the issues title. And of course, Pete just runs away, but eventually once he comes back home, there's EMTs and police in front of his house. It's almost kind of like it always reminds me of, if you watch Batman Beyond with Terry's father, he's walking home and it's like all this, that going on. It kind of reminds me of that. And this is where, like, you get flashbacks, into what happened via M.A. telling one of the detectives, which in this case is Captain Stacy. Is it Captain Stacy? Yeah. Recounting the events, hours ago, or at least, a little while ago, where they heard a break-in. They assumed it was Peter coming through the back door, but it turns out to be a burglar. And of course, Ben tried to de-escalate the situation, telling him, like, basically, like, is everything's okay, guy? You probably won't find much here. Heck, you probably got more than we have, kind of situation. And I guess it's kind of upset the robber, and he took a shot and ended up killing Uncle Ben. Typical story. And Peter leaves out the door and starts swinging, tracks, using the police to track this guy down once they figure out where he was located at. And of course, beats the mess out of this guy until he realized who the guy was. And, like, of course, it was the same guy he let go, could have stopped. And he takes out his wallet to find out who the guy's identity was. And it's like, unlike Joe Chill with Batman, he almost never know who this mugger is. I mean, you can look it up and you'll figure out the guy's name, but it never sticks. I don't know why. Maybe it's because they kind of, at a certain point, they kind of hammer it home of who that mugger is for Batman, while they kind of like left it alone with the Ben Parker murderer. Because I remember during the events when Ben Reilly was prominent in the Spider-Man stories back in, like, early 2000s, early mid 2000s, and, like, he was briefly dating a girl who was the daughter of said mugger who shot Uncle Ben, and they never done anything since with that girl. It's kind of funny that, it's like, could have bring that girl back and do something with that. Of course, he ties up the robber, gives him up to the police, and decides to do the whole live the lesson of the great power, great responsibility, and starts using his powers to help people. And of course, one day he comes home and he sees Mary Jane, and she asks him, is everything all right? She heard about what happened and everything like that. And I love this sequence where it's kind of like, what's going on, like, like what you probably deal with typically now, where it's like, where you're just allowed to because he just drops everything and just starts breaking down, and you just feel it in the drawings and lets the dialogue, and it's just like he's trying to put on that kind of, like, I got this, but he's just like, I don't got this. She asked like, how are you doing? Like, I don't know. Because I may for a time being stand with like Mary Jane and her parents, who she eventually goes through something with, because her father, typically in stories with MJ, she always got a crappy home life, typically from the father. She's, you know, she waited outside, you know, looking for, waiting for him to eventually stop by, and like, you know, she says like she's worried about him, and he just starts like just breaking down crying. He's like, he's a kid. He it's a lot of things he'll be going through in this long issue run where he's just like, you know, things is it's just like it doesn't work out. I mean, of course, it's, you know, it's like a Spider-Man story. Things don't go as planned, but it's just Peter in his slightly younger days that makes it all even more difficult, because he's worried about like getting with Mary Jane and doing schoolwork, and you know, and just he just expects to have fun for the most part with being Spider-Man, just stopping a mugger or two, but things kind of escalate when you're dealing with big time heavy hitters like Kingpin, Hammerhead, Doc Ock, Green Goblin. It's like just big time kind of deals, and it's like it is just like difficult. And of course, like eventually Green Goblin starts rearing his head, because he, you know, starts remembering things like, because he's kind of like almost like a mindless beast at this point, which eventually he stopped being, but he just starts like just spewing words, Parker, Parker. He's just repeating that, and of course he tracks Peter Parker down and starts attacking Midtown High. And of course, Harry's there. And of course, Harry's on some kind of like mental hypnosis thing in his therapy, but it's Miles Warren, aka the Jackal, but he's not the Jackal in this yet. In this universe yet, if at all. He uses his skills to keep Harry docile and not, because Green Goblin goes on a rampage throughout that lab. He eventually goes to his house. He sets it all ablaze. Harry's mom is killed. Of course, we never see her. And just like with my spoiler review of Spectacular Spider-Man, you see, at the very least in that, you actually see Harry's mom, which we really never have at almost any other mediums, because honestly that's the only time I ever seen. Because if you watch my spoiler review on that, check it out by the way, and it's trying to get this video to like over 100 likes if you are so inclined, and check out my Patreon if you have like certain comic book requests that you want me to review. But at the very least, we get to see her in that show, but she doesn't have any speaking dialogue from what I remember at all. But you don't, I mean, what we get here is like a scream and like a dead hand, and that is it. That's kind of wild to me. It's like, you know, what's going on with this, like his mom? We never do nothing with that in any Spider-Man iteration. And that's like one of those few things that, like, if I was writing for like a Spider-Man story, I would do something with like a special, you know, intimate event with Peter Parker, like reintroducing the child of that mugger, really hammering home the name and his life and all that stuff, and you know, and the inner turmoil with Spider-Man racking I don't know what the exact like a big adventure is gonna be, but it's gonna be some very intimate stuff where like Peter, probably like the end result is trying to have Peter ultimately forgive like the Margaret, or at the very least learn to grow past that a bit, because like Batman by and large by this point, he at the very least, I mean, Three Jokers, wasn't that good. It was all right, but it wasn't that good of a story from what I remember. I read Three Jokers. It's like I really don't want to pick this back up. Partially, rather not pick it back up. Maybe if some time goes by, eventually I will get back into it, maybe for a review. But at the very least, it's lets Batman really deal with the whole situation with Joe Chill and ultimately learn to grow past that point. So some growth and some healing from Batman that, kind of like that little boy inside him never got a chance to do. I want something like that for Peter Parker, where he's like, learn to evolve and I don't want to say like get over, but it's just like reach to a certain point where he has to let that pain go, kind of situation. And then someone with like Harry's mom, like you do something with that, because you don't get much with that, and like and show that why like Norman Party was so into her in the first place. Because I can't imagine anybody with any sanity really like get involved romantically with Norman Osborn. But I imagine, just like in the Daredevil show with Vanessa with Kingpin, she gotta be on some kind of like sadistic kind of mentality on some level. I mean, not on the same degree as Norman, but on some level to find some level of attractiveness that he found in her. Just like you see like in Daredevil show, where it's like these different buildings are blowing up and she just standing and looking, and like most people would be calling the police right now, but she's in it and then offering suggestions and stuff like that. It was still today's day is wild to me. But I want like something like that, because that would make sense. Eventually Peter, because he eventually got his own web shooters, which he used some of his late father's formula to eventually crack this particular code he haven't figured out in order to create his webbings. But he ends up fighting Goblin in the school, not that too dissimilar to Amazing Spider-Man, where Peter's fighting the Lizard in this school and just wrecking up the place. And you hear like Harry just screaming like, he's after me, he's after me, he's coming after me. Because he's going through like some severe freaking trauma. But eventually Peter stops Goblin, but he shows up later again, because especially after like Harry's talking to the police officers after the incident, saying like it's Norman Osborn, and he fights Goblin again on top of one of the bridges, and of course one of the police helicopters is showing up, taking fire at Goblin. He seemingly dies in the water. Of course, he eventually shows back up. Now, after he gets hired at the Bugle, not taking pictures right away, because they haven't gotten to that part yet. It's kind of like kind of smartly written that way, where it's like he just right away becomes a photographer, because that's what we all typically remember his biggest profession. Even if you are not an avid Spider-Man reader, most people recall, just like with Clark Kent, Superman, he works for the newspaper. You know, it's typically, you know, Peter's profession, but he works under Ben Urich, who's a part of the coolest looking Ben Urich that I've seen here. Because usually he's just a little bit older of a dude, like, you know, slightly grizzled kind of guy. Here, he's experienced, but he could easily be like in his early 40s at the most. Um, uh, so I mean, hoping to get some money by getting pictures of Spider-Man for the Bugle. Of course, you got J. Jonah Jameson just looking at us like crap, crap, mega crap, and he just doesn't pay. But you know, after one of the workers there, she's trying. I don't know if it's like Betty Brant, that version of Betty Brant or not, but she's having trouble with the computer. Peter fixes it, you know, very smoothly. And it's like, okay, well, you'll just be our IT guy, and that way he got his, you know, job. And of course, he comes to realize about this Kingpin story, realizing that the mugger who killed his uncle is very low on a totem pole, but is overarching towards Kingpin, being like, okay, you're the reason ultimately that because your criminal enterprise caused the death of my uncle, and I'm gonna put a stop to you. And of course, this is young Spider-Man. It's kind of like Spider-Man year one. He hasn't gone through any like kind of proper training, because that's like slight, you know, difference here. Like at least because I haven't done like a spoiler review for Batman Year One. Eventually, I really need to, because it's one of my favorite Batman stories. Because like in terms of favorite Batman stories, it's like Batman Year One, A Long Halloween, Arkham Asylum, Serious House on Serious Earth, Batman Ego. Of course, like DC Metal is kind of sort of like a Batman event, but it's like, you know, slash Justice League as well. It was kind of like, think of it as like Captain America Civil War. It's supposed to be like a third Captain America film, but it's kind of like Avengers 2.5. You know, it's kind of on that same kind of distinction. So, sure to break in, because like, you know, he asked Robbie, like, you know, why anybody, we got like clearly dirt on this guy, but nobody's doing anything about it. And of course, Robbie's trying to give him like, you know, a word of advice, because, you know, at a certain point, you know, you get a little older and like that youthful optimism gets worn away. And it's like, you know, there's real life things happen, and it's like, you know, this guy, you know, greases the wheels. He, you know, he pretends to be a philanthropist, but he's really like kind of sucks into everything, and it's like nobody will be there. It's just like this TV show. He got sucked into everything, as people cannot touch him. He, you know, got, you know, hooks into like judges and, you know, businessmen, and, you know, everybody can easily get him off. But he breaks into this man's house without any real plan, and he really criticizes himself heavily in the story when he makes these kind of blunders. And it's like I mentioned, bring about Batman. It's like at least Batman, you know, in year one, it doesn't go off perfectly, but it's still far better than what, like, you know, Peter Parker would have been doing his first year in Spider-Man. Because it's a lot of trial and error with a lot of these superheroes. Because like I imagine you go through a lot of their origin story, they make heavy blunders. Because it happens. Batman try to, you know, his first night out in the costume, if you recall the story, even from like the animated movie, he tried to stop some guys trying to break into a house, stealing people's TVs and stuff like that. And like he very clunky way, but he eventually stopped them. But it's kind of as he puts it, kind of like, you know, just you being like a lucky fool. But he eventually like regroups, learns to, like, you know, learn the layout, like yeah, use like the shadows properly, and like show it just times right things like that. It's just like he does proper planning, and Peter, smart as he is, isn't he doesn't typically strategize before he goes jumping in. So he gets caught on camera, silent alarm goes off, he gets spotted by the Kingpin, and he gets attacked by Ultimate and Electro, who kind of looks like a burn victim, but he eventually becomes like that blue color for some reason. I can't recall as to why, because Ultimate Electro is typically like all blue. That's where they kind of based the whole Jamie Foxx thing off him in the first place. But sometimes, just like you've seen in like one of the WandaVision Halloween episodes, where you see Wanda and Vision in their like comic book accurate costumes, and it's fun to look at, but it doesn't translate well in live action. It's kind of like a piss poor a dime store Halloween costumes. And that's why I love like No Way Home. It's like you get some not only slightly more comic book, well, it's still accurate, but it just translated a little bit better with the suits. And it's like when the electricity goes off, it goes into that starfish shaped kind of mask. It's not actual the mask, but it makes the shape of it where you still get that iconic look, but it's I hate to use the word in this superhero context, but slightly grounded variation on it. And Jamie Foxx is actually allowed to be like cool, funny, but also menacing. So he, Peter gets like thoroughly beat up, because like Wilson is just huge. It's like he just like can, Peter's just the length of one of his arms, or as MTV Spider-Man puts it when he fought Kingpin for the first time, it's like each of your arms is the size of Brooklyn. And of course, it's like they always want to make Kingpin like cartoonishly huge, and it's like in like Spider-Verse, he's just just big big square with a head on front. He's that massive. It's like it's almost like a joke at this point, where it's like anytime you depict the Kingpin in comics or animation, he has to be like a brick shit house of a person. But they take down Spider-Man, they take off this guy's mask. The thing is, they never they don't know who this kid is. He's just like, oh my god, he's just a kid. And of course, like Kingpin just tosses the guy out the window. He wakes up just in time to like catch himself, but he walks home ticked at himself because he allowed himself to get played and unmasked. So the date that he promised MJ some time ago that they'll go on, at least the day after this event transpires, he had to cancel because his body's just completely sore and it's aching. He needed like time to heal up. But of course, this puts MJ in like a funk because like, okay, like I mean, there's times when MJ is not as understanding as she probably should be, but also you can understand her side of things. I mean, eventually she knows who he is, but even then, there's some times where it's like she also can't equally handle it at the same time. But he ends up canceling as he's trying to recuperate. And during this time, Kingpin ends up killing a guy, snaps his neck while putting on Spider-Man's mask on him. It was one of those guys who was running like the Enforcers. Of course, like you remember Ox Montana and Fancy Dan. And the Ox in here is like, just big black guy who's not an idiot, but he's definitely like, you know, like a little bit slower than the others. And of course, the news, you know, eventually report about like, you know, this murder guy in like the river wearing a Spider-Man mask, and that's where like, you know, Peter seen on the news is like, oh my god, like now he's like, oh my god, now I'm gonna be blamed for that somehow. Um, and of course you get a situation with like Aunt May, because like, of course, this is not too long after, because this year is gonna be rough for both her and Peter. Her more at home because she lost her husband, and you know now she, because like the only other family she has now is Peter, and when he's off somewhere, she's worried about like, okay, what's going on. It's like, and then she, as he comes home, she asked him like, do you like me, Peter? I was like, why would you even say that? Because you know, because she just like, she feels she feels she cursed, because eventually she sees a therapist, but she feels like she's cursed. It's like, you know, one by one she's losing, you know, the people close to her in her life, and it's like she's trying to keep Peter as close to her as possible. That way, you know, she won't lose another in her family. Uh, at one point during class, Peter gets this idea about like I think it was studying about like history with Richard Nixon and how he got busted. He got all this kind of like, you know, written stuff and tapes, and it's like you know, like why would we keep all this incriminating stuff? It's like because he thinks he's untouchable, which leads Peter to investigate what kind of security system that Kingpin uses, and that way he sneaks back inside properly this time, takes all this incriminating stuff, especially the ones that has his face on the cameras, before it gets, you know, backed up into a different server, because I guess he had like a couple of days or something like that, and he breaks those, but he gives the rest to the police eventually, and like the Bugle and stuff like that. And but before he leaves out, after he takes down the enforcers and Electro, he gets confronted by the Kingpin right as he's about to leave, like out the exit door. And this is funny. Is one of the funniest interactions that I've seen in this, you know, 85 issue run that I read so far, and it cracked me the heck up, man. I was on the floor. 1 second here. I want to read. I know, like, you know, there's a lot of people on the edge in recent days about the use of the word fat, which is ridiculous, in my opinion. Because they treat like it's the N word all of a sudden, and it's not. Like I've been fat, and like, you know, I have a gut too. And it's like you know, sometimes you gotta let this stuff roll off your body. But I'm a millennial, so I grew up in the era where it's like you gotta, you know, deal with certain things that, you know, hey, it sucks, but you know, as long as they're not putting their hands on you, it's like you can just, you know, let it roll off. But Peter is getting stopped by the Kingpin, and he's like, you know, telling the Kingpin, you know, there's thing I've been thinking about telling you next time I saw your face, and I've written it down, and I want to make sure I get this right. And it's like, well, what do you want to tell me? It's like, it's like, okay, here it goes. You are so fat that when you cut yourself shaving, marshmallow fluff comes out. And the look on his face is it's like, no? Okay, how about this one? You are so fat that your high school yearbook photo was taken from a helicopter. Ooh, tough crowd. Okay, how about you are so fat that when you get on a scale, it says one at a time. And it's just like he loses, and of course Kingpin just loses it because he was really playing that seriously, and it's like it was amazing. That was like that cracked me up because like, and then Kingpin just comes charging him. Of course, you try to fight with this blind rage, you make mistakes, and of course Peter finally gets one up on him. He webs him against the wall, and he leaves out and gives out the incriminating evidence, which puts Kingpin on trial, which he eventually has to, thanks to his lawyers, he got off, but he's went out of the country for a while to lay low. But Kingpin in this well, technically the entire 130 issue run is like the ultimate kind of like overarching bad guy in between these other bad guys in short arcs. So that's that. Like I said, he eventually tells MJ the truth about who he really is. Of course, she's excited. She's in his room. He's jumping over down the bed. It's like, oh, like I'm dating, a superhero. Woo woo. And of course, as they're like, they're about to make out, and that's when May comes bursting in, and it's like, MJ, I got your mom on the phone. She said she wants you home right away, and it's like you want me home now? Like you want me to change the kitty litter box? Like only like what chores? And it's like, and then I gotta go home, and it's like because MA assumes that these two are like getting on and everything like that, and she's trying to like, you're a grown boy, Peter. And it's like you got to preference safe sex, and it's like, oh my god, I don't want to listen to this. That's another funny moment. Like I really love it out the entire series. It's just like the awkwardness of the conversation. Did Ben tell you about the birds and the bees? Like, oh my god, yes, we had this conversation. I want to talk about this. It was like really, really funny. Eventually we get the introduction of Ultimate Grand Stacy, and here she's kind of like a very hot goth girl, and she got like kind of like not like a chip on her shoulder, but she's having like a tough go because like her and MJ had like a tough family life with and that's, I guess, is what draw all three of these kids together because they're awkward in school and they have like a trouble home. Her mom just up and just abandoned her and her father, Captain Stacy. That's like, like never wanted kids in the first place and stuck in his life and blah, blah, blah. So she's eventually up and just leaves them. And of course, Mary Jane has a father who cheats on her mom and everything like that. That's why she's having a tough time just chilling the heck out with Peter and not understanding, like, because there's moments when Peter kind of snapped at her, but he kind of right. Of course, we got a different worldview now than we did when this comic book was written, but it's like he's yelling at Mary Jane, and it's like, of course, he probably should use a different, tone, but he's not wrong. It's like, Mary Jane, it's like, you gotta just listen to me. When I tell you to just do something, I just need you to do it. And of course, it's like, I hate to use this whole term because I know like women like to throw around like misogyny and everything like that, but it's like you're a couple, like women likes a man to take charge, and he's taking charge in the situation. He says like, don't do this, don't go near that, stay away from here. He's not it's like you might view it like, oh, controlling. No, he's trying to keep you safe. Can't explain it to you right now because especially if he's in the thick of things, just trust me when I say do this for your well-being. stay away from this part, stay away from this person. But of course, like Mary Jane has her own thing, it's like, because she at first eventually got like, gets jealous of Gwen Stacy, especially when the whole ordeal with the mom, and because eventually Captain Stacy dies eventually, because that's typically his story. And she starts living with, she gets adopted essentially by Aunt May, and of course she has a little mixed feelings about this hot blonde girl, this hot goth blonde girl staying with Peter, because she essentially is projecting her personal issues with the father onto Peter, thinking he's going to do the exact same thing, and which means she probably should like kind of see a therapist about that, because it's like you're projecting. But I love Gwen Stacy in this. He's really like a badass in this. Of course, this is me like just into goth girl, so I can't really like be biased with this. But and of course, she always like steps in when Kong is trying to like bully Peter, because Kong is just like suspecting at one point that, oh my god, Peter Parker is Spider-Man, when he starts putting two and two together with like the whole spider bite and certain things at the basketball, and this kind of like moves and the way he just strangely dodged out of stuff, and then he tries to kick him when his back is turned just to see him to try to dodge. Peter of course senses it, knowing what's coming, but it's like, oh my god, the Oscar goes to, and of course he allows the kick to go through, and then he turns around and starts bawling like he's like trying to win like an Academy Award or something, like, why would you do this to me? And of course Kong is flabbergasted, because it's kind of like disproving everything, because even though he's telling Flash and Liz that he thinks like Peter is Spider-Man, and Gwen steps in because he doesn't like bullies, and like whips out a switchblade on Kong, and it's like, oh, you like picking on Peter? You like picking on people, huh? How about you get picked on? Like, how'd you like that? And it's like, and of course she nearly gets expelled, but thanks to her police captain dad, avoids the whole situation. But anyway, this arc is going through with like Doc Ock, Ultimate Doc Ock, and of course not too dissimilar to what we see in Spider-Man 2, because there's like a moment where he has like that brown trench coat thing, and it's straight up like Spider-Man 2 is where part of that movie got that look from, Ultimate Doc Ock. Of course, you get to see a little bit of Hank Pym in here, who's one of the doctors who's overseeing like Octavius's medical care. And of course, the scene where he's bursting out is just like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, where it's like his arms is like going all over the place, tearing into people and everything like that. It's a real horror show. Then because he's another person to eventually figure out like Peter Parker Spider-Man, because he worked with Norman Osborn, but also he was like a double agent working for Justin Hammer, who was sent to like a spy on Norman Osborn's inner goings on. But now he's on like a revenge trip to take out Justin Hammer, because he essentially sent them like there to like die and everything like that. Or at least, the very least, abandoned him without making sure he was okay. Of course, eventually he calls out. He breaks in one of like Justin Hammer's like he was revealing some new tech, And it was on a monitor where it's like, people can witness on what, Hammer scientists were up to. And of course, they are horrified on the TV screen when they see Doc Ock breaking in and just tearing through all the scientists and calling out Justin Hammer. And of course, Spider-Man goes at that lab and jumps in, and of course, gets his butt beat because he underestimated his opponent. And at the same time, we're also dealing with Ultimate Kraven the Hunter, who is, like running like a TV show, like, kind of like Crocodile Dundee, not Crocodile Dundee, like Steve Irwin, the Crocodile Hunter. And he decided to charge himself into take down Spider-Man, his ultimate prey. Also, we get the introduction of Agent Woo from the MCU. We got Agent Woo. Of course, we didn't know like Woo gonna be like a huge thing, or at least like a name on people's lips like that. But it's more so thanks to forgot the guy's name, but his last name Park. Thanks to that actor, really make Woo stand out a bit. We also get Sharon Carter, Ultimate Sharon Carter. Of course, if you know those names, you know they work for Shield, and are doing some investigations here and there in terms of like situation with Doc Ock. Ock calls like a press conference.
Domino's new loaded taco covered with melty cheese and toppings.
Sorry.
Just like
he calls out Hammer and thinking it's gonna be like a private meetup. He's trying to embarrass him in front of like, all these news cameras that set up with all these newspaper people. And he ends up, as Hammer's trying to slink away, kills the limo driver, turns over the limo, and of course, like, Spider-Man eventually shows up and fights Doc Ock. And there's one moment where he actually pants down. It was really hilarious. But Hammer ends up dying from a heart attack because of all the stress and everything like that. So, Octavius didn't even get his revenge. And as soon as he eventually takes down Octavius through this grueling battle with all these like metal arms, Kraven shows up, and of course Spider-Man just quickly lays this guy out with one punch. This big time game hunter who takes down rhinos and lions and all this other stuff gets just laid out one punch. That was that was everything. And there's one woman that's like assumed it was like his like Calypso, but not so much, I guess. And of course, after this, dealing with these fights that, well, before you get to that, the newspaper people are there, which gives Spider-Man time to actually like tell people like who he, really is as a hero. 1 second here. Sorry, 1 second here. Sorry. I kind of expected a little bit more with like Craven, but we don't really get much with him. He quickly gets arrested eventually. Uh, uh, yeah, he mentioned that he just fell backwards into these powers. I'm trying to do what I can so that people like that don't try to hurt. He points to activities. People like that don't try to hurt people like you. She has like, why wear the mask? Uh, well, it's no big conspiracy or anything. I just want to do what I can for people. But I have family and friends, and I don't want to like put their lives in danger just because they know me. I want to protect them, so yeah, I wear a mask. It's pretty simple, really. But people have a hard time trusting someone dressed like this. Well, I have a hard time trusting people who wear those hats with a beard. He's making a joke, but I know it's corny, but the outfit means something to me. Yeah. Even though my wearing the mask might have idiots like that point to Craven, trying to use me to get attention for themselves, and people like that load J. Jonah Jameson at the Bugle trying to use me to sell papers by trashing the crap out of me all the time. I just don't care. Uh, uh, a guy a whole lot smarter than any of us once told me that with great power comes great responsibility. And that's not just for people with powers like me. I think it goes for everybody. I'm just going to live my life the way and everything else is, and that way, life that way, and everything else is just noise. Uh, so just the line dialogue. So yeah, I mean, I like that. And everybody started clapping. It was like a whole thing. Like people just like, I was waiting for somebody that's like, yeah, you mess with Spider-Man, you mess with all of us. Oh my god! And of course, when eventually he gets home, he gets super grounded by Aunt May because like, of course, he doing this big fight way out in Jersey, and he had to go all the way back to Queens. And I imagine that's not like that easily kind of a web swing back. Even though he makes a comment at one point to Doc Connors that, because he eventually finds out who Spider-Man is, that as fast as I am web swinging to one place to the other because there's no traffic stops, it still take him a while. And of course, Aunt May dealing with her own stuff with grief and everything like that. It's like, I don't want to lose anybody else, and I don't know where you was at, and kind of class and everything like that. So it's like, and of course he's not telling her the truth. Why can't he? And then of course she ultimately grounds him. And this of course when like Doc Ock eventually, I mean not Doc Ock, Osborn eventually comes back and a little bit more coherent in his goblin form, and he essentially like like Harry Osborn's brought back. He's under like more like psychotherapeutic hypnosis, like weaponized suggestions, just to keep him docile or just unconscious. Uh, he's basically like putting it all on the table to like Peter. It's like, okay, you had your fun with the whole superhero thing. What's running through your veins I made, so it makes you essentially my son. So you're gonna do as I say. If not, I'm gonna kill anybody uh uh before I kill you. And so you're gonna be working for me. And of course like Peter of course like leaves out in like scary, is completely scared out of his mind, not knowing what the heck to do. And it's like understandable because he's like essentially a kid. He hasn't like really like dealt with anything this level of serious. Uh, but he eventually has a talk with Nick Fury, who shows up because there was like a therapist that popped up once before, asking him these strange questions, but kind of realize he's like a secret agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. And Fury just tells him, as much as he can tell him, that Osborn was working, in a contract for S.H.I.E.L.D. to try to recreate this formula for us. But we just soon discovered that he was cutting corners, putting lives at risk, and he's not very good of a businessman or scientist. So we decided to cut ties with him completely. Of course, he's going to eventually have you try to kill me, but you're going to need to just turn him down. And of course, because we bugged them, but we can't really go off of that because it's not illegal for us to be bugging people. But we got to wait until he actually breaks the law in order for us to just jump in. So of course, yeah, he's gonna try to come after people that We're gonna have people waiting outside in front of like MJ's place, telling her and your aunt. So as soon as he tries to make any move, he essentially breaks the law, and we'll just immediately step in automatically and arrest him. But of course, Peter don't think that's good enough because people there's a chance they'll still get hurt. Because how fast are you? Because he points out an example about you wasn't there when he did this and the other. So how can I count on you to jump in a nick of time before people I care about get hurt? So feeling like he's on his own, he tells Osborn to F off. Of course, he soon then quickly goes after MJ after he sends a limo to take her to his spot and kidnaps her, pretty much recreating the whole situation that typically is resigned for Gwen Stacy with the whole bridge situation getting tossed off. But Peter saves her correctly, no neck break, and she gets taken away by cab back home while he deals with Green Goblin. And he just lays out Osborn, but S.H.I.E.L.D. is also there and got a helicopter laying down fire, which of course Osborn is mortally wounded, so he hightails it back to his place, takes some more of this serum that keeps him not only his faculties in order together while he's in goblin form, it also helps him heal. But then it's this fight going on, he's trashing the whole entire place. Harry shows up, sees that Peter's Spider-Man, but he ends up passing out, but not before he takes one of the debris and stabs Norman through the body before he ends up killing Peter. And thank God, because it's most other writers will have Harry Osborn blame Spider-Man or Peter for his father's death. No, he knows his father was a complete jerk, and Peter wasn't solely responsible. Kind of situation. So of course, the S.H.I.E.L.D. end up taking care of Harry for a little while to try to essentially deprogram whatever Miles Warren did to him. Look on it. Sorry. Um,
Morningstar Farms veggie sausage.
uh, uh, d- 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 oh, we got a brief thing where you get the know about like Gwen's uh personal family background, like I mentioned, the whole mom situation. But it's like a funny little ordeal aside from that little tidbit where the Rhino is tearing up town, which ultimately the Ultimates show up. Or at least Iron Man shows up to deal with it, even though Peter spent the next like several minutes trying to like get out of the school. And of course, he gets stopped when he sees Aunt May showing up for a surprise parent teacher conference kind of situation. So as he dips out of there, he tries to run, but then he gets stuck because of the Gwen's situation. And after he deals with that, you see it's like MJ's poking out her head out the window. It's like, what are you still doing here? There's a Rhino. Like, I'm trying. It's like I keep getting stuck by nonsense. And then Flash Thompson, he's trying to throw like a football at Peter's head, but he takes the football and just chucks it with all his spider strength and just went soaring. And of course, they went chasing after him, and he dips and gets out of the way. But by the time he shows up, I want to include that because that was just funny as hell to me. That he's trying to make it out through all this BS, but it just doesn't work. But then, of course, we get the George Stacy death with uh uh with some imposter Spider-Man. It's always like during the early comic book stories of Spider-Man's adventures, there's always been some kind of tale with an imposter Spider-Man. But typically it's usually like a chameleon. I expect it to be a chameleon because I forgot about this part of the story. It's typically the chameleon showing up to utilize all these gadgets to fake being Spider-Man in order to rob places. But it's just like a dude, just like an ordinary dude. And somehow he managed to have some kind of tools in order to recreate Spider-Man's things, which is like you're just an average guy. You have no indication that you're that smart to make fake stuff to appear like Spider-Man. It was kind of nonsensical. It was never. There's certain moments when you're reading through this, Bendis doesn't really elaborate on, or at least he brings up, and it kind of feels like you never hash it out at any point during this adventure. And during this whole situation, Peter gets shot by one of the officers who's while he was trying to stop this imposter, because everybody's not believing, starting to believe that Spider-Man turned turncoat, and then MJ, pulls him out of the trash and takes him to the hospital in his plain clothes just to, have some proper surgery, but leaves out with her in secret, so they won't get apprehended by the police. well, of course, Gwen Stacy through series of issues, uh, up to the point when she figured out Peter Parker Spider-Man, believes Spider-Man was the culprit, even though many times people, even the criminal that Spider-Man eventually captures, fully admits that he did it. She just can't let that go, which is kind of because Gwen Stacy's been played smart for a bulk of the story, and I just like, I don't know, it's I won't say hard to believe, but it's just like you got so much evidence and people telling you that, hey, it was not actually Spider-Man, and it's like you're directing your anger at the wrong individual. You should be like hating the actual guy who admitted it. But that part is like I could not get. This is probably the one time like I really did not care for Gwen Stacy on this story, because you've been played so brilliantly so far. At least everything around this you've been played smart. But when Spider-Man eventually busts this fake imposter in this bank who holding like a taser up into like a hostage face, he doesn't even make no jokes. He just goes on and just beats this kid nearly to death. And eventually, because like he ends up killing, because in the mainline story, Gwen Stacy's father dies from falling debris when he's saving this kid from being crushed to death. Here, saves a kid from like because there's some kind of like one of the stray bullets that hit the backpack of this imposter Spider-Man, has like gizmos in there that was about to explode, so he tosses it randomly, but he sees like it's about to land on a kid. He puts the kid out the way, it lands on Stacy and explodes. So which eventually just like with Peter Parker, cops showing up in front of the house thinking it's gonna be for Peter, it turns out it's for Gwen. And it's eventually like have May adopt Stacy, Gwen, because the mother still does not want anything to do with her own kid, even after she explained that the father died. And it's like, what the heck, man? Then we get the arc with Ultimate Venom. And this is where the whole Ultimate Spider-Man game comes into play, because it's like this throughout this arc, I just like memory starts flashing back, stuff that's like been in my subconscious for a long time. Very rarely I think about that game, even though it's one of those games I really want that remaster so bad, because I remember loving the heck out of that game. And of course it brings back memories of Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions during the Ultimate Spider-Man arc, and it's like the look of that, I think it was smartly done by the creators of that. Really, matter of fact, after I'm done with this, I want to look back up like the developers and everything behind Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, and like the stuff put in towards developing each universe to make sure it's kind of like lines up with everything around it. I imagine they took what they seen from like not only the Ultimate Comics, but the look of the Ultimate Spider-Man game, and kind of like incorporate that during that slice of Ultimate Spider-Man's adventure, because like I love the look of all those universes in that game, but like it's just something about Ultimate Spider-Man's universe seems, I don't know, I want to say, I don't like the word slicker, but it's definitely unique, and it's like I just love the look of it. And of course, just like in Spectacular Spider-Man, Eddie's parents worked with Peter's parents. They was like huge friends. The kids played together. Eddie, of course, was slightly older than Peter, and the parents was working on this formula to help cure cancer, but they haven't really finished it, before their tragic plane crash. Eddie, working with like Connors, developed this black goo, which of course it turns out to be venom. But this kind of gives like Peter like kind of some kind of sense of like, because he watching old videos of his father and his research and everything like that, and he's kind of like missing his parents and his father and everything like that, and it's like needing like a father figure in his life because like his Uncle Ben is not around, and he's kind of like need that in his life. And tangentially he has Eddie Brock, because now what their parents left behind they can just work on together and everything like that. But of course they soon realize, or at least Peter soon realized, this thing is trouble. Not only that, Eddie, he soon realized after this situation how much Eddie is more often not trouble, because he's not a good roommate. He's kind of like a jerk to Gwen because she's high school. Like she mentioned she's like 15, 16, and he's like, I don't know, he's like a freshman or a sophomore in college, but he's definitely like significantly older. Not significantly, like slightly older than her by a few years. And let's just say he's like 20 and she's 15. That's still, illegal. Doesn't even matter by the slight age difference. Because especially if the girl, it doesn't want it, that makes it even worse. But still, it wasn't appropriate. And Gwen kind of warns Peter down the line. It's like, man, because even like he hears it from Eddie's roommate, you hearing it from Gwen, like your childhood buddy isn't as good as you think he is. And it kind of reminds me of like the Spectacular Spider-Man episode when Eddie's kind of like really like have nothing to do with Peter as he's trying to make his moves on Mary Jane. In that episode, she used almost the same words to Peter in that show, like, I don't think he's your bro anymore. So Spider-Man breaks in hoping to like finish his father's work, gets the goo stuck on him, and eventually of course turns into the Spider-Man suit. And of course, unlike most other stories, when the suit is introduced, we have like several issues to live with this suit for a while before things take a turn. This happens almost in like one night, like Santa Claus, where he's faster, he's stronger, he takes hits a lot better. He's dealing with Ultimate Shocker very easily, and these kidnappers very easily, but like more aggressive. But then he happens upon a mugger who shot this guy in front of his family, very like Batman like, and he goes after him. Then he just starts turning into like because it really the symbiote feeds off that aggression, and it's like oh, you killed that person, you killed my uncle, and he turns into this big venom creature, and he's nearly about to kill him until like Peter like regains control and runs out and like managed to get the suit off. Trying to remember if he used sound, because I'm pretty sure, because no, he lands on some power lines because fire is also a very extreme heat also affects the symbiote. So it gets off of him. He managed to, like, you know, trap it and destroy it. But of course, at the same time, you know, as he's trying to do this in the lab, Eddie finds out he's Spider-Man, and I like that he breaks it down right away instead of keeping to himself or trust me. No, he just tells Eddie right then and there, "Hey, this thing ain't good. It's not meant for anybody. It is destructive. We cannot let this out." But unbeknownst to Peter, Eddie kept a small sample for like his own private testing, and it gets on him. He turns into Ultimate Venom, and of course, because this part reminds me of the game where, because you get to swap. Once you make that game so unique, you get to swap back and forth between Venom's adventures and Spider-Man's adventure, and like you fight Venom as regular dress Peter Parker near the school in the rain. And it was like, oh my god, it just really like just brings back all these memories of that game. He ends up beating Venom by utilizing heat. And of course, he is led to believe that he killed the closest thing to, other than Aunt May, the closest thing to family. So he's like feeling some type of way. He eventually runs to like Nick Fury to beg him, like, do whatever you can, take these powers away, I don't want it anymore. And Fury just tells the kid, like, hey, you know, like as I mentioned to you before, you know, during the whole Osborn situation, there's going to be times where things going to get rough and you're too young for this, but you're in it. But, you know, when you turn 18, like, you know, because here's the thing. Peter tells, trying to repeat what Fury said to him about, you know, like, because he did say in the whole situation with like him revealing himself in the schools, like, you know, when you turn 18, you're mine. And it's like, how else you going to interpret that? Because it's A, it sounds like a freaking threat. B, it's like, you know, you're just like waiting for like your chance to get your hooks into me, because legally you can't right now because I'm only like, you know, like 16. And like, you know, 16, 17, something like that. But, you know, he's like, no, what I said was, you know, like, you know, you'll be able to, you know, join like the Ultimates and like, you know, he didn't say that, but he didn't say what Peter, you know, because what Peter said was right in a way. It was like, you know, I don't know if it was using like those verbatim words, but that's basically what he was coming across. You know, it's like, you know, oh, like, you're mine, kid. That's what he said. Like, you know, when you turn 18, you're mine, kind of situation. And it's like, you know, it was the whole thing. Like think like Bendis didn't even bother to like word it in a way to make Fury right and Peter misinterpreting. and it's like, just wait, like, when you join the Ultimates, well, you get things situation. You're going to take your lumps for a while. We all been there. It's like, that's why I say you're way too young for this, because you won't be able to properly handle tough situations, and there are going to be more. But just chalk it up to like a life lesson, so that way you can, when next time you go through it, you can better handle it. Uh, and of course, now we're going through like an arc with this kid I assumed was like the ultimate version of Nitro, this mutant who has an ability to explode, who was the catalyst to the comic book Civil War, when like a bunch of people died during a fight with one of these young superheroes. I don't know if it's like New Mutants, or not New Mutants. It was somebody of that ilk that's doing like a reality show trying to save people on camera and everything like that. But they were inexperienced. They was foolhardy. They didn't like assess the situation properly, and a bunch of people died, which was the catalyst for Civil War and the Registration Act. But it's not that guy. It kind of looks like that guy, and the exploding powers is gotta just me reminding of that kid, but it's a different guy who's an exchange student from Latveria, and of course utilizing his powers, causing places to explode just for fun. And Spider-Man is trying to, essentially try to get this kid on the right path, but he is completely immature. Trying to help causes like a more destruction, which raised the antennas of the X-Men, which they, Xavier sent off Jean Grey, Shadowcat, and Storm, and of course they're hotties, they always are, and of course Xavier reached out through his mind, and of course he make this Charlie's Angels joke like morning angels, and nobody got it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of disappointing, especially after I just recently did like a Charlie's Angels Full Throttle spoiler review, which, by the way, check out my review on Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, as well as my review on the first one, which I did like a couple years back, up on my YouTube channel. Oh, and then taking a moment to express that I'm nearly at my 400 subscriber goal. So once we reach it, I will be doing like a Hot Ones challenge video where I try all the hot sauces and answer all your questions via like Twitter or YouTube. So they try to like help out, and oh my god, I keep like dipping into YouTube, guys. It's like stinking thing. Of course, this is a funny moment where like Jean Grey, of course, she likes to talk through people through their minds and everything like that. And of course, like it was like a funny thing where she says like because it was a little uncomfortable for Peter, because unlike Liz and a couple of people from the school that acts very like bigoted towards mutants, and Peter is like, not having any of that kind of talk when he's nearby. He is a little freaked out a bit because speaking somebody through his mind, and she's like, thank you, because she's like, thank you for what? Well, you're the first person in a long while that hasn't, when I do this, they haven't immediately pictured me naked. And it's like, oh, and she's like, until now. Well, you put it in his head, now he can't unthink it, so it's like you should have just kept your mouth shut in the first place. So I thought that was funny. Also funny where it's like, because you see Shadowcat fangirl out. He goes, oh my god, I mean, like, Spider-Man, and he's like, it's like she's such a fangirl. He's got a poster in his place in her like room and everything like that. So she's like super excited to like meet her like idol, and it ultimately bring back this exchange student Vlad, I think, some with a V, to the X Mansion, and like come to realize that when he was like in his mother's womb, he was possibly experimented on in the womb by people who's normally like to run experiments on mutants. And of course, Spider-Man doesn't like the idea that Xavier planned on using this guy for some kind of like political agenda situation, because he's a person. It's like, you can't just use him. And of course, Peter in his mind thinking like, because he's grabbing like the kid who's sedated, because every time he freaks out he tries to explode stuff, because he exploded the Blackbird, and it was like an awesome moment where he freaks out, explodes the Blackbird, people getting sucked out, very X2, and Jean Grey flies out, and before Spider-Man goes flat on the ground, it's like inches away, she catches him in the nick of time. That was so awesome. But he immediately like grabs the kid, Dex Cyclops, Dex Cyclops Beast, passes through Shadowcat as she's just facing through as she's trying to bring in drinks, and it dips out the window. It was seeing Charles Xavier just standing near a tree, and it's like, Mr. Parker, what did you hope to accomplish with this? And then realizing it was all in his head. Now, of course, you're wondering why he's like unmasked and everything like that. His costume got messed up in a previous adventure. Him and MJ getting back together because she's the primary one fixing up his costume, and of course they have to unmask him just to make sure he's treated well. And it's like, he has this freak out like, oh my god, now everybody knows I'm Peter Parker, and it's like, we didn't know your name. And it's like, well, at least it's other superheroes, so it's not a big deal. As a matter of fact, there's one moment where it's like him and MJ MJ makes like a list of people who know who he is, and it's like you can like cross off the superheroes, because like they have this kind of like as he put it, kind of like a universally understood professional courtesy, where it's like it's like nobody's gonna blab about who each other are, this, that, and the other, even though they don't have like super alternate identities like the same way Spider-Man does, but they don't go around just blab into the world who he really is. And of course, there's gonna be like a time in the other issue run, years after this run was over, that Peter and Shadowcat date for a good period. So Xavier promises to I know a lot of people like who read comic books, especially like the X-Men, they always have certain gripes about Xavier, but all in all, he is like a good person. But he's promising, like, Peter, like, look, I'm not going to use this guy, the way that you're thinking, because he will be a great benefit to our cause, but we will not cause this guy harm at all. And so you can trust us. So Peter gets home, and of course, like, this is around the time when like MJ really, I mean not MJ, MA really hit a boiling point where she's literally breaking through his stuff, and as he coming home, like opening his backpack and seeing his book, expecting to find like something incriminating, but it's not his costume because it's not really like all together yet. So she finds this book on Robin Hood that his mother used to read to him when he was little. So she's feeling all ashamed, and that's why she goes like, like seeing like a therapist and everything like that. So it's a whole thing like that. And like, Ma stressed, that, how much of a hypocrite she is, because like she used to sneak off to parties all the time. It's like, why I'm denying my nephew a life, because it doesn't seem fair. And I'm blaming Spider-Man because it seems like he's always seemed to be around, and I know it's not fair and everything like that. So I mean, I wouldn't say it's not important, but it's like, filler stuff to see what's going on with like Aunt May. At the same time, Kingpin's showing back up, and Peter's having like this like kind of like a blow up on around almost everybody, where it feels like, why isn't nobody's doing it? He's like just allowed to walk free because he literally murdered somebody on tape. He shouldn't be like being able to just do whatever. Because what's that say about us? And of course, he asking like, because Kingpin's also endorsing this political pundit who's running for mayor of New York, but he has an association with Kingpin and this whole campaign of anti-Spider-Man at the same time. And it's like, obviously, something's up. Ben Urich sees as clear as day. Robbie sees as clear as day. Peter, just, asks, Jonah, it's like, hey, like, what's up with this? It's like, we all seen him and, murder somebody. Isn't this like, it's kind of like really weird, right? And then of course, Jonah blows up on his kid, saying like, basically like, oh, you're fired. Because you don't need to ask these certain questions, like woo woo. And of course, Peter snaps right back at him. I was like, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't talk to you out of turn. I have like a simple question to ask, and like, and because I want to get this right, because it was like a very cool thing, because like you rarely see like Jonah like Peter go off on Jonah. 1 second here. Oh no, YouTube. God, dog it.
Melted to perfection. Try the new toast.
Oh, dog it. Oh. Better mess up nothing. I know, it's better mess nothing on YouTube when I put this up there. Oh. In fact, I should like pause like the mic while I go through these pages. Okay. He says like, like, oh, it was how I said it. How did I say it? All I did was ask you a question. I wasn't yelling or being anything but polite. I asked you a question. You're the older man of, experience, and I was asking you a question about something I did not know the answer to. And instead of answering the question, because I guess that you didn't like the answer you had, and you fire me, and that's okay, I guess. I mean, that's okay, I guess. I mean, you can fire me for whatever reason you want. Not really. Nobody can just fire people whenever they want to. It's not protocol. But don't give me that it's not what I said, it's how I said it. I asked you a question, you fired me. And Jonas yells back, oh, now you're a double fire. Or do I have to call security? And like, try it. And of course, like Robbie, of course, is like, backs him up because he thinks this whole thing stinks too. It's like, so this is you now. Every time you lose an argument, you fire the person. And it's like Jonah, I know you for 20 years, and I know you know that kid is right on the money. You're older. You're holding this paper together with Scotch tape, and now you're taking it out on a bright young man who comes to you for guidance and knowledge. I like you better when you drank. And it's like, oh my god, it's like, because like Peter eventually, it comes to like his teachers for this, and they're not giving him straight answers because like it's right, he's smart enough to know that he doesn't know everything, and he's looking for people with experience and guidance to explain this to him, how this is any way okay, and they know it's not okay. And it's like sometimes like the old generation needs to listen to the younger generation when it comes to these matters, because it's like, this is horribly wrong, and of course he's blowing up at everybody because like they don't completely know, but he's laying on a serious issue that he's trying to tangentially get somebody with experience to lay it out for him, and they're just not having his so-called attitude. Of course, he confides to Aunt May, but then she calls up Jonah and gives him an earful, which is kind of awesome. And then Yurik, who's been assigned to do a fluff piece on this, candidate, and he started asking certain questions that he wasn't supposed to ask, but then he gets like his recorder taken away and smashed, but he always been taught by Robbie to keep a backup, and he explains to like Jonah and Robbie what happened. And Jurgen points out like his office has a relationship with the Kingpin. It's public record. He had to know it was going to come up, because Jonah's been endorsing him, and like Jonah is like usually is always like a character of integrity, despite his like trash talking Spider-Man and everything like that. uh uh Robbie points out like, Jonah, seriously, all this just to hang a guy in a costume? I really don't understand. What is your problem with Spider-Man? And of course, I read this like side story with Jonah Jameson years ago. Matter of fact, I still have like the comic way in my closet, where it's like Jonah's father was like a war hero, but people outside the house see him as like a hero, but at home he was a complete a-hole, and and abusive, and so now he has like a personal issues or grudges that he's kind of projecting onto mass individuals like Spider-Man, because like who is he hurting when people are not looking? We have to know kind of situation. That's why he touts up his son John Jameson so hard, because he doesn't want to end up like his father. So he, you know, do a 180. It's like, okay, I'm gonna praise my son. I'm gonna make sure my son, gets the best, and all the stuff that my father wasn't doing right by me. I want to do right by my son, kind of attitude. Of course, in this, it's slightly different. Of course, Jonah's like, going back on his word about endorsing the candidate. They send like the enforcers to essentially beat him up. But Spider-Man shows up, beat them up, and of course, he goes to Peter's house and just explains everything, like why he did what he did. And of course, he eventually hires him back. But 1 second. Here, like John, is still an astronaut, but he died on one of the flight shuttles. I'm not sure. I haven't read too much of the Ultimate Universe. Who knows if he actually turned out to be alive and everything like that. But for right now, he's supposedly dead. And NASA didn't tell him much of everything because so much is classified. But it's like, he had a right to know because it's like he's his father. Uh, he mentioned about like his judgment's been clouded, as of late, and he essentially apologized to Peter for his behavior. Uh, um, uh, yeah. So basically, he just pretty much, it's like, my judgment was clouded. I should have taken it on you. You was coming to me, uh, and I should have been a lot better to you. So I'm going to try to do better and live by integrity. Of course, we eventually get an introduction of the Ultimate Black Cat, and of course, she gets some kind of. It's hard to tell because depending on the writer, they can dictate whether or not she has any kind of luck-based powers to give people, bad luck or something like that. Whenever she's nearby, or whenever they in her like, well, I don't know, if it's like just passive or she actually activates it internally. It's never fully explained, but let's say it's like kind of passively, and but in some iterations there's not like any kind of powers beyond like something you saw from like the 90s Spider-Man TV show, where she gets some kind of slight, augmentation, like super soldier serum, where she can actually like have some moderate bit of strength and agility. So she's essentially like Catwoman, essentially, except like Catwoman doesn't have any powers at all, never has. And of course, like Spider-Man's immediately smitten with her. And of course, there's always been like, you know, you know, Black Cat always been like the second running of Peter Parker's love interest, because of the way that they both live like double lives that MJ will never understand. But come to find out that uh, Black Cat has a vendetta against the Kingpin because her father, a infamous cat burglar himself, uh, was betrayed by the Kingpin. She wants revenge, and stealing from him and trying to bring down his criminal empire, and hopefully kill him in the process. You know, has put her at odds with Spider-Man as well. But he ends up hiring Kingpin ends up hiring Ultimate Elektra in order to take down both Spider-Man and Black Cat. And at a certain point, like, you know, there's one funny one where like Peter's looking on as these two girls like going at it, and he's like kind of like any probably dude. It's like somebody should come in and stop this. And it's like he just kind of mesmerized for a slight bit, just seeing these hot women going at it, even though it's, you know, they're playing for keeps. So he eventually did step in, but they ultimately end up both getting away while he's, you know, getting knocked over a building. Of course, like, you know, Kingpin eventually find out who Black Cat is, Felicia Hardy. Uh, both him and Elektra break into her place, essentially beat her up a bit. But Spider-Man jumps in the nick of time, but she seemingly dies falling off a building. But of course, she shows up back up again later during like a tidbit of an Iron Fist story. And here we go. During this whole situation with the Spider-Man movie and everything like that was going on at the time, you got like Sam Raimi showing up, and like Peter's a little like, you know, has some issues with this because it's like, yeah, the turn of my life. Cause he's probably mad because he's like couldn't benefit from it, because, you know, because they said like, hey, we'll bring you on for consulting and everything like that, no problem, but you're just gonna have to reveal who you are so we can actually pay you properly and everything like that. And of course, he can't do that. So it's like, them's the breaks. He can't do anything about it, and they're not doing anything illegal, so he's kind of suck it up. So of course, you get like a little moment with like Tobey Maguire in this. Is really, really funny. But yeah, they got Otto Octavius's ex-wife involved to, you know, provide, you know, the cellular rights of his life story to them so they can make a movie with him as the villain. And of course, eventually Doc Ock breaks out of prison thanks because he's mentally controlling the arms that they shield separated from him from and keeping in this kind of storage unit. It tears up most of the prison, and he's making his way out of it, and he's trying to go after his ex-wife for pretty much like betraying his trust and everything like that. And Spider-Man is already there while they're shooting this movie. Is pretty much like just spying from afar. He intervenes, but he ends up losing the fight. And then he gets kidnapped essentially, and this is all the while like Aunt May is on a trip for a week. And so while he's dealing with this, he is he's on this Osborn steals a plane, kidnapping the pilot, while they fly all the way to Brazil. And on his plane, he's torturing Peter, ripping out one of his tooth that knocked loose. And it's like, obviously it was hard to watch. It was like, it was, intense. He eventually escapes as the plane lands, and he beats him up and rip off the arms and then like the Brazilian police showed up. Spider-Man sneaks off, hits right on some cargo plane that ends up in Atlanta. At least he's back in the States, but he has to sneak on board to another plane going all the way to New York. And as soon as he arrives, he's literally going through the airport area where Aunt May's happen to be like in the crowd, and he's like trying to beat. It's almost like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, trying to beat his parent to the house, and eventually does. But all the while, Gwen figures out Peter is Spider-Man, and she has him at gunpoint. He manages to snatch the gun away and explains to her once again that he wasn't responsible. You know me. I'm not responsible for your father's death. I'm going to let go of my hand. I don't need you to not scream. Do not tell Aunt May. She's been through enough. I cannot tell her. Eventually, this kind of finally give Gwen some clarity that, Peter's not, Spider-Man's not the monster that she thinks he is. And it's like, dude, and this is saying that this image I had to put on the slide because it's like, this lucky dude has two hot chicks. One he's actually dating, but you got two hot chicks in your bedroom. It's like, God, it's like this guy's life. And he's like, oh. But anyway, and they all, are in some kind of like a Breakfast Club situation now. They're tight now. And I like this moment when they finally when Shield finally recaptures Doc Ock. They got him restrained, but they bring him to this Stark Industries kind of smelting factory, and they Fury admits to him, was like, like I don't make that many mistakes, but like I did make a mistake of keeping your arms, because we're kind of hoping to like salvage it and hopefully like make something for break it down, maybe make it something for us to use possibly, but not realizing that you still had some mental control of this thing. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna destroy this thing, but I wanted you to see for yourself. So he puts the because like he's mentally like connected to the arms. It's like it's almost like part of him now, and he's like like, no, please, not my arms. And he's like Fury is like, do it, and he dropped, and they had the arms dropped into like these melting stuff, and it's just like it destroys the arms. So now I has no way of mentally controlling the arms to break them out ever again. Of course, I imagine they somebody break them out. I haven't read like a complete series of the Ultimate Spider-Man stuff, so it's hard to know if he just reinvents some new pair of arms or something. But for all intents and purposes, Doc Ock's done. And of course, we get the whole Connor situation, where of course like Connor is eventually realized, because there was like a separate uh adventure where, you know, during one of earliest of Peter's adventures, he stops Dr. Connors as a lizard from attacking his family and everything like that. Of course, like unlike most other iterations of Connors, he still has wife and son. Here, you know, she completely left him after the whole situation, so he didn't stick by him, and he took the kid, and she essentially, you know, found somebody else. So he's, you know, in a little funk right now. But after one fight with this big bruiser that shoots out blades and stuff like that, he goes to Connors to stitch him up because he doesn't want to keep asking Mary Jane to do it because she's not a doctor and she gets kind of queasy when she have to do it. So he goes to somebody professional. Even though he's not that kind of doctor, he still like has some level of medical knowledge that he can trust, that also knows his identity. But, you know, using one of the gauze that he used to, like, you know, while he's working on him, they noticed, like, you know, he noticed something in his DNA that could be a potential breakthrough with, like, curing people like cancer and everything like that. And Peter, you know, I'm glad where you actually get like Connors actually coming to him and saying like, hey, may I have your permission to do this? I didn't want to just go behind your back. So once Peter heard that whole cure for cancer thing, he just immediately thinks about his father. It's like, you know, okay, go ahead. And of course, we also get Ultimate Ben Reilly. Of course, he's just like a black man, not anything tied to Peter Parker, but it was just something that Brian Michael Bendis used because, like, oh, he's like a topical name in the Marvel Universe, tangentially tied to Spider-Man, so let's just use the name just to get people like eyeing this. Or like, oh, could he be Ultimate Ben Reilly? What he's gonna do? Woo woo, whatever. So because Connors end up borrowing some notes left over from Peter's father, where he used essentially the symbiote kind of formula to merge, you know, mix along with Peter's DNA to hopefully, like, you know, find some missing element to find that cure for cancer. But it ends up creating Carnage. Starts off as a little baby, it ends up growing to the point where it kind of breaks out, and it starts. If you ever watched Brendan Fraser's The Mummy, essentially he does the Emotep, sucking the life force from individuals, completely mummifying them, and then, you know, because of this, you know, Peter's DNA has some residual memories, so he just mindlessly goes to Queens, and that's where he ends up finding Gwen Stacy and killing Gwen Stacy, and that's her death in the Ultimate Universe, not the typical bridge thing. And of course, Aunt May shows up, sees this throws her in like a tizzy, and of course, like, you know, when like Peter finds out, it's all like, it's just like traumatic, so traumatic. And Peter's at home trying to like go over every villain he has fought up to this point and see, like, okay, there's puncher wounds, okay, you know, like what, you know, villain do that has like kind of like, you know, capability, like, all right, Kingpin, no, yeah, Doc Ock, no, Osborn, no, Venom, close but no. But then he thinks about the Lizard, and then Connors, and you see coincidentally Connors outside his house looking over the area because he's figuring out, like, from Ben, like, the escape subject and the modified people along the way, his path. And Peter just jumps out and just beat the heck out of this dude, and it's like, what did you do? And then of course Connors shows up out of the bushes, just been hiding there this whole doggone time for some reason when the police is already gone, is because he thinks it's like a mindless thing, so it just would just be on like a just random rampage, but it's just smart enough to keep itself concealed for some reason. But because it's not tied to Cletus Cassidy. Matter of fact, there's one moment in a page where like Peter's going over to a computer and there's a list of names of like associates, tied to his uncle's killer, and there was Cleus Cassidy in one of the list of names, but we never see Cleus Cassidy in this, and he has no connection to Carnage in this universe. So Peter tangles with this thing while Connor's trying to find what he needs to deal with this thing. But ultimately, Peter fights this thing near a smokestack that has like a furnace and everything. And for the first time, he took a life, even though he doesn't, he reconciles in his mind, like, okay, this is not a living thing per se, but it's gonna keep on killing as a mindless beast. I have to get rid of this thing because it won't stop, and it'll just get more powerful because it's already starting to form into what looked like a more adult Peter that we know to him to look like in the main universe. So he tosses this thing in the furnace, destroying it. So now we see in another issue where it's like, trying to remember Gwen Stacy kind of situation where, Flash, Kong, Mary Jane, Liz, Peter are all in detention. Why? Because that is big old blow up fight where like Flash just won't let up because he's sitting there literally teasing Peter over a death of a person, a student that they all knew. And it's like, dude, it's like, have some self-reflection. But they end up in this, Mary Jane just jumps on this guy and starts wailing on him. Peter's trying to pull her off while Kong and like Liz trying to pull like, Flash off. And one teacher tried to intervene. Peter like slips, and of course, realizing his like strength, he elbows one of the teachers across the jaw, and it lands him immediately to detention. And you have this Breakfast Club moment where Mary Jane's like, okay, tell me why you acted like such a, a-hole, Flash. What is it? Just out with it. And then she comes to realize, oh my God, you liked her. You legitimately liked her. You just can't express it. And it's like, of course, there's been times earlier at least a couple of times earlier in the adventure where Flash is trying to get like a moment along with Peter to talk about something personal, but of course Peter kept blowing him off because you've been bullying this guy so much that no, he won't trust him to go somewhere private with him to have some kind of talk. And he tells him to, go F yourself. No, I'm not going to go anywhere near you. He's probably going to pants me or dump water on me or whatever. I don't trust you. And of course, like, Flash ends up leaving out of the detention, even though there's no teacher there for some reason to watch these kids. This is odd. I had detention before, at least 2 times in my entire life. I had detention. One in 3rd grade and one it's like 7th or 8th grade. Each been just one day, but there's always been a teacher to monitor everybody. You can't just walk out. So Kong trying to play devil's advocate on behalf of Flash. It's like, he's not really like a bad guy and everything like that. And Peter's like, no, he is. Like, I knew him since like we was little kids. He's always been like that because his world is run by people like that. And you're the worst comic. Like, Kong's like, oh, what about me? You think I'm a bad guy? Oh no, you're the worst because you're just one of those people who keep encouraging guys like that to be as greedy and manipulative and like sucky as much as they want without any type of consequence. And of course, like, you're like, what about you? It's like, I'm nothing. And then Peter MJ just blurted out Spider-Man. And of course, like, Peter just leaves out and everyone's like, what the heck? And then you get this, at this point I thought it was going to end here, but, because I thought it should end it on like a kinder note, but it's like a moment where you get another meet with the X-Men where it's like a typical story because every once in a while you get like a story with Spider-Man and Wolverine switching minds, and it not many people like this issue, but it's just like Peter, you just go off on the X-Men because you took a day out of my life to deal with your X-Men BS. Because like that's why people don't like you, not because you're mutants, because and it's a series of bleeps and everything like that. And the reason why Jean Grey did what she did because Wolverine kept hitting on her and she wanted to teach him a lesson. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna switch your mind to the one place you do not want to be, and that's where you'll go. And the first thing you think of, and like the first thing he thought of was Spider-Man for some reason. So that's where the mind switch, and it was kind of like I don't know, things you could do with your second powers to teach him a lesson. Why would you have him switch places with, switch places with somebody to be like a lesson? You could have just like made him pretend to be a little girl or like a big baby or anything, so you won't, temporarily, so you won't have to tangentially ruin somebody else's moment or life in a process. Then you get like a time with like Human Torch, Ultimate Fantastic Four, where Johnny has to finish a semester so he can obtain his high school diploma. So he goes to Midtown High. Of course, at the time, this is only fairly recent when they got their power cosmic abilities, and they try to keep a lid on it for a while. So no superpowers. And of course, him and Liz, get like pretty friendly until one time at a bonfire where the flames got too close to him and immediately ignited him. And of course, Liz thinks he's a mutant, so she doesn't want nothing to do with him because she's kind of a bigot that way. At least maybe not like a bigot in a true sense, but it's like she has like just like a personal thing against people with like abilities like mutants. But this is a moment where Johnny learns about like true heroism is, because he's like a Spider-Man fan himself. And of course, in the mainline comics, Spider-Man and Human Torch are like completely best, like super best friends, as well as Iceman. Because they all think of it almost like a same wavelength almost. And they help save people from a burning building, and it's like it's a complete thrill because like after the whole situation with Liz, he's like feeling some type of way, feeling bummed out, and thanks to MJ's encouraging, like maybe some words from his hero could probably get him out of his funk. So he has nice talk and gets offers some like encouragement from offer some encouragement to get him out of the funk. And then you get like a situation with team up with Doctor Strange, Ultimate Doctor Strange, but Doctor Strange Jr., which I don't really care for this little team up, because like why just Doctor Strange Jr.? It could just be regular Doctor Strange, because in this universe, regular Doctor Strange that we know of existed long. Him and Clea had a thing. It was long before what we typically know them to like be involved with the superhero community. He is like presumed dead, possibly trapped in a different dimension or something like that. So his son of him and Clea takes on the mantle of Doctor Strange. He's learned from Wong, and they're essentially fighting off this nightmare demon who's feeding off of Spider-Man. And then Doctor Strange end up fixing that situation. Then we get the introduction of Ultimate Hobgoblin, and of course, it's more like an orange, flaming version of what we saw from Norman's Green Goblin. But this is, of course, is Harry, but he's not completely in his faculties, because the Hitman that we know from earlier in the run somehow more than likely is like Miles Warren's like psychotherapy situation, implanted this guy in his mind, more than likely from the Norman Osborn's like instructions, in case like kind of like a sleeper agent situation, and obviously fooled around with his DNA. Not sure how Shield did not find none of that throughout their, you know, supposed curing of Harry throughout this whole mental manipulation thing. And of course, Harry, you know, doesn't want anything to do with his father, and he's fighting off Spider-Man and Shield all throughout New York. And this is where like MJ showing up trying to like, I'm not sure why she thinks she's gonna do anything about it, but she's just worried about Peter. And that's when the whole blow up, where it's like I mentioned earlier that, hey, just do what I say. When I say like don't be here, you do the exact opposite of what I said. Like, you know, he's trying to help you. And it was one of the most stupidest things I've seen MJ do in this entire thing. And of course, they end up stopping Hobgoblin, but Peter ends up knocking out Nick Fury because he just like in Peter's eyes, he's just like one of the worst. He's no different from what Norman Osborn was like, you know, just doing whatever that you want with impunity without considering like, you know, other people, because he doesn't want his friend hurt, and you just like just laid fire on him. I'm pretty sure he's still like alive, but they had to take this guy down. So he punches Nick Fury right across the jaw, knocking his like eye patch completely off. And of course they tase him, but like, no, leave him alone, you know. And then like he just goes off. Then we go towards at the end here. This is like Hammerhead is making a play for Kingpin's territory. We get the introduction of Ultimate Moon Knight, Ultimate Shang-Chi, because like Shang-Chi, it's like, oh yeah, Shang-Chi. He used to be a know-nothing back in the day. Not many people even knew who Shang-Chi was, but he was tight with Iron Fist. Here we get Ultimate Iron Fist as well. And I think reading this arc, this Iron Fist behaves pretty similar to what, if you even saw the Iron Fist TV show and the issues that you have with that, that's where I'm imagining where they got it from here. This, because I can't help the way like he carrying on here, I can't help but not think of that show now. Because like it's like, okay, I read like a pretty decent amount of Iron Fist. Is this little sliver of an arc that gets me to thinking like, that's where they get it from. All the wrong stuff. Out of all the stuff they could have gotten Iron Fist from, they got it from the wrong section. But anyway, you got Ultimate Moon Knight. Of course, we get to see inside his mind. You got like, you know, Stephen Grant, Mark Spector, but no Jake Lockley. I don't know if he wasn't even invented yet at the time. But there's also this little girl as a part of his mind. Not sure who that is. And of course, like when Spider-Man is trying to stop this, like you know, situation at this warehouse because it was being blown up, because, you know, Hammerhead is taking down a lot of the Kingpin stuff. You know, Moon Knight stepping in, because you gotta have that classic or infamous cliche superhero fighting superhero thing, and obligatory, that's the word I was looking for. And they are fighting. Of course, Elektra is looking on from afar just to monitor the situation, and Kingpin eventually, because he has his building monitored now, because anytime like Spider-Man just shows up, he's just like, okay, I'm just gonna have to make sure it's monitored. So he has Elektra invite him in, and he essentially has, you know, Spider-Man hired essentially, but he didn't officially. He just like laid it out, just exploiting his like heroic mentality. It's like, this is Hammerhead, here's a picture, and this is where he's going to be. He is trying to move on my territory. Now I know you don't like me, but I just like in the games, like I want to keep order in this city kind of situation. And this guy's going to disrupt everything. At least I play by a set of rules at the very least. Like I'm not, going off, half baked. This guy doesn't care about any kind of boundaries, and like any kind of finesse or tact. So, and of course, Hammerhead, the guy's like adamantium skull. That's why he's, be able to take people down, just tackling people, and or just straight up killing somebody with his head. And you can prove that he can work in the modern times. He dressed like a 40s gangster, but you can like give him like a decent modern suit, and he can still essentially do the exact same thing. And of course, we got Iron Fist and Shang-Chi trying to clean up Chinatown from like gangsters that's associating themselves with Hammerhead. And this of course, in this, Iron Fist was in like a prison for, I guess, using his Iron Fist to really hurt somebody. He was like hauled away to prison, which he only recently just been released. It's almost like a kung fu movie. It's like the supposed, kind of like the protagonist gets released from prison, goes to back home, and his friends telling him about things getting bad, and it's like his gang is trying to take over, and he's using his martial arts skills to take them guys down. Very like I don't know, pick a Jackie Chan old films, almost like that. Little did people know 20 years ago Shang-Chi was going to be a big deal in the future. And it's like, you can make Iron Fist work. You bringing back Mike Coulter, Christian Ritter, Charlie Cox, and John Bernthal for their roles from the Netflix shows. Bring back Iron Fist, but recast him, because I guess Finn Jones didn't want to do any of the martial arts films, even though he got hired on to do to play a character who is an iconic martial artist. So you had to recast some guy who can actually at least learn a bit of martial arts to play this character, and have him team up with Shang-Chi, because the lore of Iron Fist is really good. There's several stuff that eventually we'll cover on the channel that I will show you guys, so that way there is good Iron Fist stories that you can check out, and why I think he's such a cool guy. There's one in particular I'm thinking of that I want to cover. I want to see if I can fit it in the year at some point. But blow this up. Black Cat eventually shows up again, and Moon Knight trying to take down this gang nearby, because he's like a street level character. There's got tons of these street level characters. Black Cat still want to take down Kingpin, and of course Elektra is hired to take down Hammerhead. So Hammerhead says like, "Oh, I'll pay you double if you turn coat on against the Kingpin, Elektra." And she just went with somebody who might be on the winning side. Then Black Cat wants to take down Kingpin, and she sides with Hammerhead to make sure that goes exactly as planned. So, and then you got Shang-Chi and Iron Fist want to take down these gangs from messing up this neighborhood. And then Moon Knight was trying to take down like these gangs. So, and these gangs and Hammerhead's men are trying to like take down all these heroes. So now there's a whole duking out in this big warehouse. Everybody's just fight, or not warehouse, but it's like this big building, and it's like everybody's just fighting. Almost everybody. It's calamity at this point. So Spider-Man is like, okay, just F this. Of course, he got hired by because he went to Jean DeWolf, who's pretty much like almost like his Commissioner Gordon, because he told her about like, hey, Kingpin told me about this Hammerhead guy, and she just kind of encourages him, because like, hey, there's little that police can do, but you can, can operate outside of the law where we can't to like, deal with these kind of guys. So, Spider-Man's like, okay, like everybody just stop, and he starts just webbing everybody. Okay, everybody just stop, just stop. You don't even know who's fighting what. Just stop. It was two of us. I was thinking the exact same thing. Like, oh my god, what is even happening now? Okay, so he calls, the Wolf to come by with the cops to halt everybody away and sort this out later. Eventually Elektra and Black Cat and Moon Knight and Hammerhead break free, but Moon Knight gets stabbed. Hammerhead takes off his mask, try to take a picture of him with his camera phone. Just like, now I own you. Like that was going to matter to somebody like Mark, who now cannot unthink of Oscar Isaac at this point. But it's all moot point anyway, because now that the cops are descending, and it's like, he got, Hammerhead's gonna have to lay low now, and he's gonna call off like, the attack against Fisk. So Elektra just decided to just completely stab him multiple times for his size and threw him out the window, while the Spider-Man got kicked out of the window eventually by Elektra, and Black Cat tried to release Iron Fist and Shang-Chi, and of course Iron Fist is about to knock her out, but cops are descending, and Moon Knight throws one of his moon rings at a moon boomerang or batarangs or whatever towards in the back of Elektra's head. She's down for the count. Who knows? She survived. So, Hammerhead's out of the picture. Elektra's out of the picture. Moon Knight temporarily is probably out of the picture, and Shang-Chi and Iron Fist is skedaddled essentially. But all this is gone. Turns out Jean DeWolf is working for the Kingpin this whole time. And that's where we ended. It's already nearly 3 hours. There was so much going on. Because I didn't want to end it on the whole Wolverine switching brain things. I just needed okay, what's a good note to end it on? Because the rest of this, stuff is reaching towards an apex with a situation with a massive flooding of New York, because the whole situation was with Magneto and the X-Men, and a bunch of people died, including Ultimate version of Daredevil, and which unfortunately we didn't get to see in this, but and of course, in the next long 160 issue run that came years later, they eventually rebuild and everything like that. But you already know, like I said before, that ends with Peter Parker's death, in which feeds into Ultimate Miles Morales and his origin story, which we'll get into after this. But yeah, that is Ultimate Spider-Man. That is a long one, and 3 hours. Oh my god! I can only imagine with Miles Morales and Superior Spider-Man. Hopefully not as long, but anyway, let me know what you guys think of Ultimate Peter Parker and this universe as a whole, because they should bring this back. Because just like with, I made a comment, because I made a spoiler review on Superman Earth 1, one of my earliest superhero comic book reviews, which I suggest you guys check out, please, and let me know what you guys think. But Earth 1 is like, the Ultimate Universe for DC Comics. Marvel Ultimate Universe is a pretty solid universe that I kind of wish they, somebody just, bite the bullet and just somebody editorial bite the bullet and just reinstitute this universe and make it his own separate thing, his own situations and stuff like that. You can pretty much, when you're doing these alternate universe, you can play around as much as you want. By and large, it's no different like What If or Elseworlds stuff. You know, get somebody with some good stories and you just play around with this universe, because it's actually a solid universe that I like diving into. But anyway, because like I want to do some like Ultimate like X-Men, Ultimate Iron Man. It's like it's Ultimate Fantastic Four. I really want to like check those out at some point in the future. But anyway, let me know what you guys think of this universe. I will see you guys on the next comic book review of Miles Morales' origin story. That might be a bit, but hopefully we'll get it done to you in a timely fashion. I'm not gonna make a hard date. I'm gonna try to get it done as quickly as I can. But I will see you guys tomorrow for a movie review. What's another review I'm going to be doing? Can't remember. But yeah. Oh yeah, it's going to go movie review. Probably should wait till Saturday, because I already watched Shazam 2 and I'm going to do that review on Saturday, so I might as well do 2 movie reviews back to back on that day. So look out for that, and I'll just get back into trying to finish up Fire Emblem Engage tomorrow. But anyway, I will see you guys later. So take care, have a great night. Peace.